Welcome to a new edition of Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns with you again as we talk about this week in Cardinal baseball. And we're going to get to this in a second, but a little different background because I'm down in Springfield, been spending a couple of days down here watching the Double-A Cardinals, and Mike is up in St. Louis. But Mike, a good week for the Cardinals. Of course, some big series. They sweep the Houston Astros. The road trip in the series in Miami ends with a 4-1 loss on Wednesday. The only run for the Cardinals, a home run by Ivan Herrera in the ninth inning. And I think probably a little bit disappointing that you lose 2 out of 3 in Miami after sweeping the Astros, but still overall a 4-2 road trip.
The positive aspect is you have to be excited about a 4-2 road trip, right? If you'd have told me playing Houston and playing Miami, we probably would have thought that would have been the other way around. I think the frustrating part is losing 2 out of 3 to Miami. Now, Miami's playing well right now, but it's the pitching staff just has a few problems they need to work through, I think, still.
Good week for Mason Wynn. We'll start with the positives. Obviously, he went into the series at his hometown in Houston with 1 RBI on the season, and then had 7 in the 3 games down in Houston, some big hits, and I think is finally maybe turning the corner a little bit offensively.
He's a guy that they really need to get going too, right? Mason's a big part of this lineup and a big piece of this lineup. And as we've talked about, 6 through 9 throughout the lineup this year just hasn't produced the way that they should. And you're really, leaving some key guys on base. To me, one of the telling stats throughout this whole 3-game series against the Marlins is how poorly they were with runners in scoring position. But it's nice to see Mason start to pick that up and look like he's trending in the right direction.
They've also struck out 34 times in the series in Miami and struck out at least 9 times in all 6 games on this road trip. And I know sometimes there's different school of thoughts about strikeouts. Some people don't get as worked up about them as some of us, so we say older school baseball fans do, because to me, nothing good comes out of a strikeout. I mean, you don't advance the runner, nothing happens. So to me, I do look at strikeout totals, and I think the Cardinals, is at least for this week, were a little high.
Again, you talk about old school versus new school. The stat that you look at the most is strikeouts, and the stat that I look at is run differential. And no team is going to be successful with a negative run total or run differential, right? And no team's going to be successful with strikeouts. So I think those are things that we need to see change. And it's nice to see some of the guys figuring that out, but now you're starting to see Jordan Walker start to slide a little bit more toward the strikeout aspect that he was doing last year.
Yeah, even when he had a 15-game hitting streak, I think he struck out like 23 times during those 15 games. Let's talk positives though here, and the fact that despite some of the nitpicking that we're doing a little bit, this team is 14-10, which I think at some point probably before the season began, if you and I were to say, what do you think the Cardinal record was going to be after 24 games? I don't think either one of us would have said 14-10. So you have to be encouraged by the start.
You have to be very encouraged. And the question I would ask you is there something the team is doing right now that does not seem sustainable for the long haul? When you watch this team, I don't know that there's anything above and beyond extraordinary, because you're having days where they hit well. You're having days where they don't hit. You're having days that they pitch well and days that they don't pitch well. And I think that's kind of what we thought this team was going to look like.
And maybe other than Walker, having 8 home runs, I don't think your guys that you're counting on to play, in the lineup on a regular basis have done more than what you probably expected them to do. I mean, I think we all kind of expected JJ to come in and play well, and he has gotten on base a lot, scored a lot of runs. I think we expected Burleson to follow up on the way that he hit a year ago, and I think he has done that. Herrera, the same thing. We knew he would kind of probably get off to a slow start because he really didn't have a lot of chance to play in spring training because of the knee inflammation, and he has ddone that. Gorman is, kind of mixed in some bad games with some, good games and hit a few home runs. So, I think there's room for growth there. So I don't think there's any reason to think this team can't be a club that can win, 14 games out of every 24 that they play. I think, the starting pitching has a chance to be a little bit better. I think the bullpen has a chance to get better. I still think maybe there's some moves to be made in the bullpen, but I would agree with you. I think that, this record is probably about maybe surprising some people. And I know you've got the numbers on the playoff percentages, but to me, it's a club that's playing about as, the look, if you do the eye test and you watch this club on paper, I think that's about what you would expect them to do right now.
And the two interesting things to me are, one is, I agree, this eye test looks like this is the team we thought they were going to be, at least you and I did anyways. And if they continue to win 14 out of every 24 games, That means at the end of the day, we'll look up and the Cardinals will have won 94 games. That's the current pace that they're on right now. Now, is that going to happen? Probably not. But even if that slips a little bit, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if 85, 86, 87 is what wins this division, right? And I think that's probably where they're going to fall, somewhere in that range, if I had to guess.
Because you also have to expect that maybe some of these guys like Walker will slide back a little bit, but then maybe there's some of the other guys who will pick it up a little bit. One of the guys who really hasn't performed well lately is Victor Scott II. He's in the middle of what is a 2 for 25 slump right now at the moment. And of course, the problem with Victor is when he's not getting hits, he's not getting on base, he's not using one of his best assets, which is his speed and a chance to steal bases and set up the top of the lineup for from RBI potential. So I think he's a better player than 2 for 25. Yeah, and that's everybody goes through it. You go through the different points during the season for different reasons, but the whole key to sustaining a winning record is not to have too many guys going through it at the same time.
And if we can have some of these guys like Mason went through his slump and Victor's going through one, if that can happen and we're still winning, 4 games above 500 at that pace, like that's going to bode well for this team. And I think that's the key, right? Can you win while guys are slumping? And can you win while things aren't going the way that you want them to go? So then when they do click and all of a sudden you have a really good month, let's say, then all of a sudden you're, 8-10 games over 500. It's a whole different ballpark.
Now, of course, people are always going to say, well, yeah, you played a lot of teams that, not necessarily going to be contending ball clubs, and that's going to change here coming up soon because the Cardinals have some games against some really tougher opponents. The Dodgers and Milwaukee are on the schedule here coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll maybe get a little bit better read of how some of these guys are going to do. But you look at the back end of the bullpen with what O'Brien has done and with what Jojo Romero has done, I think you have to be very pleased with that. I know the one thing that drives you up a wall because you talk to me every night about it when it happens is when the relief pitcher comes in and walks the first batter. But walks in general by the bullpen has been a huge problem. They had way too many walks out of that bullpen.
Way too many free passes. And I think what's interesting now is I've noticed this in more games that I've been watching too. So with the ABS system in place, I think a lot of pitchers aren't getting those outside calls anymore because the umpire knows whether he, let's say a guy like Bill Miller, who usually has a very wide zone, isn't calling it as wide anymore because he knows there's going to be challenges coming. So I think guys are afraid to go outside. And so I think it's changing the way some of these guys are pitching. And some guys probably haven't figured that out yet. But regardless, you can't give free walks and you can't give free passes. And that's what comes back to kill you every time, especially when a bullpen guy comes in and walks the first batter. It's inexcusable in my mind. There's no reason that should ever happen.
That plate in the bullpen is the same size as the plate at home plate when you get into the game.
I would
still throwing from a mound 60 feet 6 inches away.
I would much rather you come in and give up a solo home run than a walk, because to me the walk's always going to kill you, but you're just wasting pitches. At least if it's a home run or he hits the ball, you're throwing strikes, and that's more important than anything.
Or just hit the guy. That's only one pitch, and then he's already on first base anyway. The Cardinals have been a magnet for guys getting hit, and I think you're right about the walks. I do think there's a problem within baseball because of the ABS system. I think that is leading to a lot more walks. I don't think it's just the Cardinals that are walking a lot of guys, but I think the disparity is when you look at how many walks the starting pitchers have given up in a lot more innings than how many total walks that the bullpen has given up in a lot fewer innings.
And I think some of that will change, right? And as we're going to talk about here in a little bit too, we've got, 17 games in 17 days now after the off day here. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how Ali chooses to use the bullpen and how long he lets some of these starters go throughout this long stretch. And that's just going to, lean well into the rest of the season where we're going to have long stretches throughout.
As we mentioned, we are down in Springfield. I got a chance to stay at another Drury Hotel. Got a chance to watch a couple of the Cardinal AA games as they play the Midland Rockhounds, and they're some interesting developments. Also got a chance to spend some time with William Doyle, the Cardinals' top pitching prospect. Got off to a poor start, two rough games in his first 2 starts. Much better in his most recent outing. He'll pitch again on Saturday. Cardinals are still very encouraged about his progress and has some interesting comments from William that we'll have in a story coming up as a part of a profile piece they'll be doing soon here on stlsportspage.com, so you can look for that. Enjoyed getting a chance to visit with him a little bit, and he's obviously a guy that they're counting on to be a part of this rotation. Maybe not in 2026, but I think, certainly if we're playing baseball in 2027, at some point, I think you'll probably see Liam Doyle pitching in St. Louis.
We're really excited for Liam Doyle and excited to see him up here. And this is an exciting time for a Cardinals fan. And I realize, some of the rebuild aspects aren't enjoyable for a lot of people and it's not great, but the level of talent that we've picked up in pitching prospects alone, there's a lot of guys that are right there on the cusp of being the guy here. So, I think when you look at this starting rotation, there's big tests every day going forward for these guys, because at some point, sooner or later, you're going to have a lot of guys, and Liam Doyle included, knocking on that door ready to go.
The one that we did get a chance to see pitch on Tuesday night in Springfield, Jurangelo Sinja. The interesting thing about him, of course, now he was the pitcher acquired as part of the package, part of the return that they got from Seattle, the 3-team trade with Seattle for Brendan Donovan. He's the switch-handed pitcher. He throws both left and right. As you see the video here, he is throwing left-handed, getting ready to start an inning, and then he's going to switch over here in a minute and throw right-handed. He's doing half of his warm-ups left-handed, half of them right-handed, and which is fine and normal because we kind of thought that was the plan going forward this year. As Cardinals had said in spring training that he was going to be warming up. There he is now from the right side. Uses the same glove, by the way. It's an oversized glove that he can just switch back and forth between the two hands. Did not get a chance to talk to him about that and what that experience is like. But anyway, he is also now making some appearances, at least one appearance in the game, each of his starts so far this season, as a left-handed pitcher. So he's doing some left-handed pitching in games, still predominantly being a right-handed pitcher. But on Tuesday night when we saw him against Midland, he pitched left-handed against 3 consecutive left-handed hitting batters coming up for the opponents. Got to hit the first guy and then got a pair of groundouts. So interesting to watch this development, how it's going to be going forward, because that's apparently how they're going to try to use him, at least for the start of this season.
It's certainly got to be a challenge to switch back and forth, because you warm up one hand and then you switch to the other hand. And I'm sure that's hard. It's exciting for us as fans to watch. It's cool. And, you think of what kind of weapon that could be out of the bullpen, having the, not having to have an extra guy because he's left-handed or right-handed. He fits a nice role, having the ability to do both based on your lineup.
It's hard enough to do one, to have a guy who can do both. It's kind of you can kind of compare it in one sense a little bit, although I think it's much harder than that to being a switch hitter. And people always talk about how hard it is to switch hit because you have to spend twice as much time working out. You have to practice hitting from both sides of the plate. Well, he has to practice pitching from both sides. And I think, Matt Pierpont, who's the Cardinals director of pitching, came over from Seattle a year ago. So he was actually in the Mariners organization when they drafted Sinja out of Mississippi State, worked with him for the last part of that 2024 season. So he has some familiarity with him. He's actually in Springfield this week as well. And we talked about Sinja and the fact that, so the first time you see him do it, it's really unique, but it looks like he actually has the ability to do it.
And the other question too, to answer the question, the answer to the question that people have is both the batter and the pitcher have to declare which side they're going to pitch from or bat from, and they cannot switch once the at bat is started. It used to be bounce back and forth, but they cannot do that anymore. So now, you won't see anyone switching mid at bat anymore, but they have to declare to start.
People. I do get a question on Twitter when I mentioned that he was doing that on the on Tuesday night. And somebody said, "Well, Craig Counsell got all upset about the Ohtani rule and the Ohtani exception. Was there going to be an exception for him that he can pitch both sides?" And I don't see any. There's nothing in the rule book that says you can't do that, other than you said you have to stay pitching the same way as that at bat starts.
Yes, usually you can switch per at bat, but when you have to declare and then stay that way for that entire at bat.
Another thing that was going on in Springfield that we want to show a little quick video for you about is part of the Hotel Route 66 Centennial renovation. This is the 100th celebration of Route 66 running from Chicago out to Los Angeles. There are some new sculptures, Route 66 sculptures going up around Springfield, and one of them is right outside of Busch State, outside of the ballpark here, and it was just put up this week, and we had a chance to chat with Madeline Curtis about that statue.
We get a chance to visit with Madeline Curtis. She's an artist from Springfield, and they tell us a little bit about these signs, first of all, Madeline.
So this is for the celebration of Route 66, the 100-year anniversary in Springfield, and I recently won a contest to paint one of these, and I decided to do mine on Hammond's Field, and This was just installed yesterday, and it's going to be here for many years to come. And there's multiple Route 66 sculptures around Springfield that you can see that kind of show the spirit of Springfield.
Well, that's exciting. It just this is the first day really that it's being unveiled.
Yes.
If it was just out yesterday. So, can you tell us a little bit about your specific artwork?
Yeah, so I made everything digitally first to kind of figure out what I wanted to do on a mock-up, and I kind of just wanted it to be like everything all at once, everything that comes with going to a baseball game. So fireworks are such a big part of Springfield and the Hammonds Field, so I knew I wanted to incorporate those, and then the crowd having little signs and just everything that you think of. I thought of the green kind of as the grass on the field. And yeah, so that's about it. And then I, of course, included the Cardinals on the top.
So we talk all the time about people coming down to Springfield from St. Louis to take in a ball game. Now you got something else to check out when you get here. It's kind of a really neat piece of artwork. And I have noticed through driving through town, there are some other ones popping up as well, part of the 100 anniversary celebration of Route 66.
Very cool, very exciting for them to be able to do that and celebrate that milestone of Route 66 starting in Springfield, Missouri.
We also, of course, picked a good night to be in Springfield because it was Wicked Night at the ballpark. And Wayne Schroeder, who is the son of some real good friends of ours from Marshfield, has been in Wicked for the last 14 years. He's originally from the Ozarks, and he was in town. They're playing the show this week in Springfield. So if you're in the area, haven't checked out the show, encourage you to do that. He's a great big Cardinal fan, lives in New York when he's not touring with Wicked, but he was quizzing me about all the prospects and all the players coming in the organization, and knew all about him and how well the Cardinals have played this year. So really had a happy time getting a chance to talk with Wayne and talk Cardinal baseball, and also talk about his career on Broadway and in the musical world.
It is a small world. It's funny how things connect, isn't it?
Yes, we talk about that all the time. So very pleased to do that. So let's get back to St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Though, as we mentioned, they have the off day on Thursday and then start a stretch coming up on Friday. You mentioned it, 17 games in 17 days. This is going to be a pretty tough stretch for these guys.
If I had to guess, one thing that we talked about before the season started, we wondered if the Cardinals would go with a 6-man rotation at any point in time. It would not surprise me if you see that 6-man rotation used through a time like this, because Ollie has done that before. I think it's pretty fairly obvious, but I'll go ahead and jump out on a limb and say that Hunter Dobbins will be the 6th guy that they bring up to do that. And so then I think really it's an important start for Andre Palante and Kyle Leahy kind of throughout all this process, because does Dobbins kind of force the hand of one of these guys based on how well he pitches, and do some of the struggles of the bullpen change how they want to use Palante or Leahy throughout the rest of the time too? It'll be interesting to kind of see how they play this out. I'm curious to watch.
Yeah, and so when they're going to try to insert that 6th starter into that 17-game stretch, and how many appearances? You would think it probably would be 2 spot starts within that stretch there to kind of give the guys their other routine number of days off. They've been able to get by without that to this point because they've had almost a regular day a week off in the schedule, but that's all stops here starting on Friday. And Dobbins, I think, is going to be the guy. He pitches again on Saturday for Memphis. He's 3-0, 3.86 ERA. His rehab starts down there as he recovers from the torn ACL he had last year while pitching for Boston. I think had Richard Fitz not gone on the injured list, had to have surgery and is out for the season, could have been a little bit of question about whether it would have been Fitz or Dobbins to get that opportunity. But now Fitz's injury has kind of seemingly settled that question.
Yeah, and I think depending on how Dobbins pitches up here could raise the question of, does he stay as one of the 5 after this kind of 17-game stretch, or do they, kind of tweak something out here? And obviously he's only in Memphis because he's on the IL due to, injury rehab. So they will have to kind of shift some things around to figure out what they want to do. And maybe Palante or maybe Leahy kind of bounce back to that middle inning guy where they've struggled some. So it'll be interesting to see what they want to do.
So we will see how that happens. Of course, the opponent this weekend, starting Friday night at Busch Stadium, the Seattle Mariners. One of the disappointing realities of that is that Brendan Donovan will not be in town. Obviously, I know St. Louis was ready to welcome him home and give him a very nice ovation, probably well deserved, more even probably than the ovations that Wilson Contreras got when the Red Sox were in town. But he had to go on the injury list earlier this week because of a groin strain, and some of the Mariners have said that he is not going to be traveling with the team. So even if he wasn't on the roster, he's not going to be in town apparently as well either. So looking forward to seeing Brendan, but that's going to have to wait.
Hopefully this means we're getting done with some of the AL teams. I understand that people like it and it's fun to see some of them, but man, we've played a lot of them to start the season for sure. So this will be a tough stretch for the Cardinals, and it'll really, there's some answers to be had in this team. Is this team that's 14-10 the team that's here, or is it somebody else? So it's going to be really exciting to watch them kind of prove themselves over this tough stretch.
You've got you have to, after the series against the Mariners, you go to Pittsburgh for 4, then the Dodgers come to town, and then you have Milwaukee. So it is going to be a pretty tough stretch. One position
followed by 4 in San Diego. So it's going to be a very tough stretch of games against all teams that are, playoff caliber teams.
One thing I meant to mention when we were talking about the minor leagues, and I forgot to do that, by the way, Jimmy Crooks hit his 8th home run of the season on Wednesday night. So off to a very good start in Memphis. And as we know, the Cardinals catchers have struggled a little bit. That's another thing to kind of put on your radar to watch a little bit to see when they decide to maybe try to do something different with the catching spot.
I think we all could have kind of guessed how Mo would have handled this, but now being Heim's first year, it's going to be interesting to see, does the play of the team up here, does the record kind of force the hand of hey, this team's playing well. Maybe we really do need to think about the fact that we're not getting any production out of Pages or Pozo and bring up Jimmy Crooks, or, the other question mark is going to come down to Lars Nootbaar and, how well does he play when he comes back, and can he stay healthy? And if that's the case, then great. But if not, you got another guy in Joshua Baez down there. So you got some really good guys in Memphis that are starting to kind of raise questions up here that I'll be curious to see, how does Heim kind of handle this team over the next little bit if they continue to lack production in the catcher spot and in left field.
And if they continue to play the way that they played, in a 14-10, kind of status at this stage of the game, if they could go 14-10 in their next 24 games, then we'll kind of see where things stand.
And I think, and I don't know what all the results have happened today, but as of yesterday, when you look at the stats, there are 5 teams, all 5 teams in the National League Central have a winning record. There were 5 teams in the entire American League with a winning record. So it just goes to show you kind of how well this division's getting off and going, but the Cardinals are right there in it.
So maybe it is good that they're playing all these American League teams early.
Maybe it is good.
Do want to also encourage everybody to check out our merch store. We got some great Mother's Day items. It's not too late to get your favorite woman in your life present there through our store. Whether she's a baseball fan or not, there's something for a little bit of everybody that I think you can find something that would please. And it takes a couple weeks to get these shipped, we found out. So I encourage you to act fast if you want to order something from that favorite mother or woman, wife, sister, girlfriend in your life that I think we have something that would please all of them. So all of your support there goes directly to supporting us here on the website and keeps this podcast as well as all of our content free and available to everybody. So and of course this podcast available wherever you get any of your podcasts.
And if you can, please, go into our YouTube page, subscribe. It's very helpful for the algorithms. It's helpful for all of us. You can do it on Spotify. You can do it on Apple Music, wherever you get your stuff, wherever it's easy. Once you click that little subscribe button on there, it doesn't do anything other than send you a notification every time we post the next podcast. So if you want to be updated and know when our next podcast is going to come, click that subscribe button on there and it will send you a notification every time.
And if you're still able to do that, we also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. If you haven't done that as well, you can do that just by going to the subscribe on the page about us on the website, stlsportspage.com. It comes out usually once a week, contests and other items, some fun items that usually don't make it into the main website. I think you'll enjoy as well. It comes directly to your email once a week. So Mike, appreciate the visit. It will be an interesting weekend down at the ballpark. I'll see how the Cardinals and Mariners play this weekend, and we encourage everybody to do good, have fun, watch baseball. Thanks for joining us here on this edition of Reigns on the Cardinals podcast.